Well, today we're going to start reading about the thoughts and ideas of this man named Karl Popper. So I would gladly ask you to join me in this magical reading. So, insofar, it says here, Karl Popper, insofar as a scientific statement speaks about reality, it must be falsifiable. Karl Popper, 1902-1994. Let's get a little bit of the context of Karl Popper. He belonged to the branch of philosophy of science, and the approach he used was analytic philosophy. Before him, in the 4th century BCE, Aristotle stresses the importance of observation and measurement to understanding the world. In 1620, Francis Bacon sets out the inductive methods of science in Novum Organum. In 1748, David Hume's as I was saying, in 1748, David Hume's As I was saying, in 1748, David Hume's inquiry concerning human understanding raises the problem of induction. And after Karl Popper, in 1962, Thomas Kuhn criticizes Popper in The Structure of Scientific Revolutions. And in 1978, Paul Feyerabend, in Against Method, questions the very idea of scientific method. So let's start with a proper reading of this whole text about Karl Popper's ideas. We often think that science works by proving truths about the world. We might imagine that a good scientific theory is one that we can prove conclusively to be true. The philosopher Karl Popper, however, insists that this is not the case. Instead, he says that what makes a theory scientific is that it is capable of being falsified or being shown to be wrong by experience. Popper is interested in the method by which science finds out about the world. Science depends on experiment and experience. And if we want to do science well, we need to pay close attention to what philosopher David Hume called the regularities of nature, the fact that events unfold in the world in particular patterns and sequences that can be systematically explored. Science, in other words, is empirical or based on experience. And to understand how it works, we need to understand how experience in general leads to knowledge. Hi, Asabark. Consider the following statement. If you drop a tennis ball from a second floor window, it will fall to the ground. Leaving aside any chance events, such as a ball being snatched away by a passing eagle, we can be fairly sure that this claim is a reasonable one. It would be a strange person who said, "Hold on, are you sure it will fall to the ground?" But how do we know that this is what will happen when we drop the tennis ball? What kind of knowledge is this? The short answer is that we know it will fall because that is what it always does. Leaving aside chance events, no one has ever found that a tennis ball hovers or rises upwards when it is released. We know it falls to the ground because experience has shown us that this will happen. And not only can we be sure that the ball will fall to the ground, we can also be sure about how it will fall to the ground. For example, if we know the force of gravity and how high the window is above the ground, we can calculate the speed at which the ball will fall. Nothing about the event is even remotely mysterious. Nevertheless, the question remains, can we be certain that the next time we drop the ball, it will fall to the ground? No matter how often we conduct the experiment, and no matter how confident we become about its outcome, we can never prove that the result will be the same in the future. Black swans were first encountered by Europeans in the 17th century. This falsified idea that all swans are white, which at the time was held to be universally true. Here we have a swan, black swan, and a white swan. And here, let's read this map. It says here, scientific understanding works by induction. Then, this means working from particular observations, such as every swan I see is white, and moving to general principles, such as all swans are white. But these principles can't be proved. Only disproved, such as by the sighting of a black swan. Then, Karl Popper concludes, insofar as a scientific statement speaks about reality, it must be falsifiable. So, inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning. This inability to speak with any certainty about the future is called the problem of induction. And it was first recognized by Hume in the 18th century. So, what is inductive reasoning? Induction is the process of moving from a set of observed facts about the world to more general conclusions about the world. We expect that if we drop the ball, it will fall to the ground because, at least according to Hume, we are generalizing from innumerable experiences of similar occasions in which we have found things like balls to fall to the ground when we release them. Deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning. Another form of reasoning, which philosophers contrast with induction, is deductive reasoning. While induction moves from particular case to the general, deduction moves from the particular case to the general, deduction moves from the general case to the particular. For instance, a piece of deductive reasoning might start from two premises, such as if it is an apple, then it is a fruit, since all apples are fruits. And this is an apple. Given the nature of these premises, the statement, this is an apple, leads inescapably to the conclusion, it is a fruit. Philosophers like to simplify deductive arguments by writing them out in notation. So the general form of the argument above would be if P then Q, since P therefore Q. In our example, P stands for it is an apple, and Q stands for it is a fruit. Given the starting points, if P then Q and P then conclusion Q is necessary or unavoidable true. Another example would be if it is raining, the cat will mew, mew, mew. If it is raining, the cat will meow, since all cats meow in the rain. Meow in the rain. It is raining, therefore the cat will meow. All arguments of this kind are considered by philosophers to be valid arguments because their conclusions follow inevitably from their premises. However, the fact that an argument is valid does not mean that its conclusions are true. For example, the argument, if it is a cat, then it is banana flavored. This is a cat, therefore it is banana flavored, is valid because it follows a valid form. But most people would agree that the conclusion is false. And a closer look shows that there is a problem from an empirical perspective with the premise, if it is a cat, then it is banana flavored. Because cats, in our world at least, are not banana flavored. In other words, because the premise is untrue, even though the argument itself is valid, the conclusion is also untrue. Other words can be imagined in which cats are in fact banana flavored, and for this reason, the statement that cats are not banana flavored is said to be contingently true, rather than logically or necessarily true, which would demand that it be true in all possible worlds. Nevertheless, arguments that are valid and have true premises are called sound arguments. The banana flavored cat argument, as we have seen, is valid but not sound. Whereas the argument about apples and fruit is both valid and sound. Karl Popper said, every solution to a problem creates new unsolved problems. Also, he said, science may be described as the art of systematic oversimplification. Hi, Doc Blogs. Thank you so much for that. Let's read this example. Here we have lots of examples, right? Take a closer look at this thing. Photograph, take a picture of this page, and I will read this for you. It says here, an example of a problem of induction is that no matter how reliably a tennis ball behaves in the present, we can never know for certain how it will behave in the future. So in experiment A, we have the ball coming in from the window, doing this motion, the second time the same motion, but we don't know, according to Karl Popper, if the ball is gonna resemble the same behavior as these two cases. So we don't know exactly which way the ball's gonna be, according to Karl Popper's theory. 20 push-ups for 40, says Soul. Falsifiability. Deductive arguments could be said to be like computer programs. The conclusions they reach are only as good as the data that is fed into them. Deductive reasoning has an important role to play in the sciences, but on its own, it cannot say anything about the world. It can only say, if this is the case, then that is the case. And if we want to use such arguments in the sciences, we still have to rely on induction for our premises. And so science is lumbered with the problem of induction. For this reason, according to Popper, we cannot prove our theories to be true. Moreover, what makes a theory scientific is not that it can be proved at all, but that it can be tested against reality and shown to be potentially false. But one that can only be shown to be false by observation. Theories that are unstable, for example, that we each have an invisible spirit guide or that God created the universe, are not part of the natural sciences. This does not mean that they are worthless, only that they are not the kinds of theories that the sciences deal with. The idea of falsifiability does not mean we are unjustified in having a belief in theories that cannot be falsified. Beliefs that stand up to repeated testing and that resist our attempts at falsification can be taken to be reliable. But even the best theories are always open to the possibility that a new result will show them to be false. Popper's work has not been without its critics. Some scientists claim that he presents an idealized view of how they go about their work, and that science is practiced very differently from how Popper suggests. Nevertheless, his idea of falsifiability is still used in distinguishing between scientific and non scientific claims. And Popper remains perhaps the most important philosopher of science of the 20th century. Experiments can show that certain phenomena reliably follow others in nature, but Popper claims that no experiment can ever verify a theory or even show that it is provable. There's a picture of a couple of scientists trying to destroy Popper's observation. Karl Popper. Let's read this piece of biography of Karl Popper so we can know who are we talking about or who we were talking about. Karl Popper was born in Vienna, Austria in 1902. He studied philosophy at the University of Vienna, after which he spent 6 years as a school teacher. It was during this time that he published The Logic of Scientific Discovery, which established him as one of the foremost philosophers of science. In 1937, he emigrated to New Zealand, where he lived until the end of World War II, and where he wrote his study of totalitarianism, the open society and its enemies. In 1946, he moved to England to teach first at the London School of Economics, then at the University of London. He was knighted in 1965 and remained in England for the rest of his life. Although he retired in 1969, he continued to write and publish until his death in 1994. Key works: 1934, The Logic of Scientific Discovery; 1945, The Open Society and Its Enemies; 1957, The Poverty of Historicism; and 1963, Conjectures and Refutations, The Growth of Scientific Knowledge. So that was Mr. Karl Popper, or Lord Karl Popper. And now we are going to read some history of the world. Today, the demise of the Ottoman Empire. The demise of the Ottoman Empire. 1783-1923. Evidence of Ottoman military weakness grew ever more apparent as the 18th century drew to a close. The Turkish Empire was defeated in 2 wars against Russia, 1768, 1774, and 1787, 1792, resulting in further territorial losses. Napoleon's 1798 invasion of Egypt was another forewarning of Europe's ambitions to take over Ottoman lands. Attempts to modernize the armed forces under Selim III, reigned 1789-1807, were obstructed by conservative interests, particularly the Janissary Corps. By this time, the Janissaries, Janissaries had become lazy and parasitic, extorting money from the state, attempting to influence policy, and deposing or killing any sultan who threatened their status. Mahmud II. Mahmud. Mahmud. Mahmud II. The Janissary Corps met with a violent end in 1826, when thousands of them were massacred on the orders of the Sultan Mahmud II, reigned 1808-1839. Mahmud proved an effective ruler. As well as abolishing the Janissaries, he strengthened central authority, weakened the power of provincial lords, and attempted to reassert control over the empire's periphery. Popper, just fanáticos. ¿Qué tal, viejo? ¿Cómo estás? Saludos. Now we're reading history. Yeah, we read about Popper, now history. In this final task, he failed. He was forced to surrender to nationalist forces in Serbia in 1829, granting it autonomy in return for annual tribute payments. After Britain, France, and Russia intervened decisively on behalf of the Greek nationalists, Mahmud was obliged to concede Greece in 1832. Trouble in Egypt. Trouble in Egypt. In Egypt, the Ottoman viceroy Mehmet Ali, originally sent to resist Napoleon's invasion, became effective ruler from 1805. The Ottoman government tolerated the situation because Mehmet proved an effective ally until 1831, when he and his son Ibrahim Pasha seized control of Ottoman Syria. Ottoman attempts to retake Syria failed when Ibrahim Pasha crushed Turkish forces at Konya, 1832, and later at Nizip, 1839. These defeats brought the Ottoman Empire to the brink of collapse, and it was only saved by Austria in Britain, who feared that a power vacuum in the region would threaten their trade links with India. Tanzimat. In the interests of propping up the Ottomans, Britain encouraged the empire to modernize. Mahmud's successor, Abd al-Majid, reigned 1839-1861, adopted a reform program known as the Tanzimat reorganization, introducing Western-style changes in education, finance, government, and the military. One condition of British support for the Ottomans against Russia in the Crimean War, 1853-1856, was continuation of the Tanzimat. However, by the 1870s, as the Ottomans reeled from successive financial and foreign policy crises, the reform program ground to a halt. San Stefano and Berlin. In 1876, Abd al-Hamid II, reigned 1876-1909, introduced the first Ottoman constitution and tried to restore stability, but was hit the following year by a Russian invasion. The Russians swiftly overran Ottoman territory, almost as far as Constantinople. Under the 1878 Treaty of San Stefano, the Ottomans were forced to cede most of their European possessions, including a pro-Russian Bulgaria, enlarged to contain Macedonia and Thrace. The other European powers concerned with Russian expansionism convened the Congress of Berlin, where they managed to revise San Stefano. The Ottomans regained eastern Rumelia and Macedonia. Russia received territory in eastern Anatolia. Britain gained Cyprus, Serbia, and Montenegro and became independent. And Austria-Hungary took de facto control of Bosnia and Herzegovina, although officially they remained Ottoman possessions. Further losses, más pérdidas, further losses. During the 1880s, European powers sought increasingly interventionist solutions to the so-called Eastern Question. That was instability caused by Ottoman weakness. Tunisia was lost to the French, 1881. Egypt to the British, 1882. And Eastern Rumelia to Bulgaria, 1885. To achieve a stronger grip on what remained of its empire, Abd al-Hamid adopted a raft of autocratic measures. He suspended the constitution, centralized political authority, and established a spy network. He also pursued a policy of friendship with Germany, inviting in their officials to reorganize Ottoman finances and armed forces. Young Turks. Young Turks. Abdul al-Hamid's repressive measures provoked opposition in many quarters. A coalition of nationalist anti-government groups, known collectively as the Young Turks, organized a coup in 1905, forcing the Sultan to restore the constitution and introduce parliamentary government. When the Sultan's conservative supporters rebelled in 1909, Abd al-Hamid was deposed and banished. The Young Turks, under the leader Enver Pasha, took full control of the empire. The Young Turks introduced liberal reforms, but were unable to stem the hemorrhage of Ottoman power and territory. In 1911, Italy occupied Tripolitania, and in the Balkan Wars, the Ottomans lost all their Balkan lands except eastern Thrace. In 1914, Enver Pasha concluded a secret pact with Germany, believing it to be the only country capable of protecting Ottoman interests. The end. The end of the Ottoman Empire. The end. World War I was a catastrophe for the Ottomans. Russia invaded Anatolia, and British-supported Arab revolt defeated Turkish forces in the Middle East. Under the Treaty of Sevres, the empire was reduced to Turkey alone. In the Turkish War of Independence, 1923, nationalists drove non-Turkish forces from Anatolia. In 1923, the Republic of Turkey was founded, ending over 600 years of Ottoman rule. Let's check out this timeline real quick before finishing our today's reading. Timeline: 1787, 1792. Catherine II wages war against the Ottoman Empire. 1828, 1829, the Ottomans lose control of the eastern Black Sea ports. 1832, the Ottomans lose Greece following War of Independence. 1840, Austria and Britain intervene to save the Ottoman Empire during Ottoman War with Egypt. 1878, Montenegro, Romania, and Serbia win independence. 1895, Turkish nationalists form the Young Turks. 1908, the Young Turk Rebellion breaks out in Thessalonica. 1914, Russia, Britain, and France declare war on the Ottoman Empire. 1919, 1993, 1923, War of Independence leads to establishment of Republic of Turkey. Thank you so much for joining me in this reading, and I will see you hopefully next week. Take care. Have a good one.